line of trees along the main road where the retreat was passing. The two sergeants were looking through the house. The girls were awake and looking at the courtyard, the well and the two big ambulances in front of the farmhouse with 3 drivers at the well. One of the sergeants came out with a clock in his hand. "Put it back," I said. He looked at me, went in the house, and came back without the clock. "Where's your partner?" I asked. "He's gone to the latrine." He got up on the seat of the ambulance. He was afraid we would leave him. "What about breakfast, Tenente?" Bonello asked. "We could eat something. It wouldn't take very long." "Do you think this road going down on the other side will lead to anything?" "Sure." "All right, let's eat." Piani and Bonello went in the house. "Come on," Amos said to the girls. He held his hand to help them down. The older sister shook her head. They were not going into any deserted house. They looked after us. "They are difficult," Imo said. We went into the farmhouse together. It was large and dark, an abandoned feeling. Bonello and Piani were in the kitchen. "There's not much to eat," Piani said. "They've cleaned it out." Bonello sliced a big cheese on the heavy kitchen table. Where was the cheese? In the cellar. Piani found wine too, and apples. "That's a good breakfast." Piani was taking the wooden cork out of a big wicker-covered wine jug. He tipped it and poured a copper pan full. "It smells all right," he said. "Find some beakers, Bardo." The 2 sergeants came in. "Have some cheese, sergeants," Bonello said. "We should go," one of the sergeants said, eating his cheese and drinking a cup of wine. "We'll go. Don't worry," Bonello said. "An army travels on its stomach," I said. "What?" asked the sergeant. "It's better to eat." "Yes, but time is precious." "I believe the bastards have eaten already," Piani said. The sergeants looked at him. They hated the lot of us. "You know the road?" one of them asked me. "No," I said. They looked at each other. "We would do best to start," the first one said. "We are starting," I said. I drank another cup of the red wine. It tasted very good after the cheese and apple. "Bring the cheese," I said, and went out. Bonello came out carrying the great jug of wine. "That's too big," I said. He looked at it regretfully. "I guess it is," he said. "Give me the canteens to fill." He filled the canteens, and some of the wine ran out on the stone paving of the courtyard. Then he picked up the wine jug and put it just inside the door. "The Austrians can find it without breaking the door down," he said. "We'll roll," I said. "Piani and I will go ahead." The 2 engineers were already on the seat beside Bonello. The girls were eating cheese and apples. Imo was smoking. We started off down the narrow road. I looked back at the 2 cars coming and the farmhouse. It was a fine, low, solid stone house, and the ironwork of the well was very good. Ahead of us, the road was narrow and muddy, and there was a high hedge on either side. Behind, the cars were following closely. Chapter 29. At noon, we were stuck in a muddy road about, as nearly as we could figure, 10 kilometers from Udine. The rain had stopped during the forenoon, and 3 times we had heard planes coming, seen them pass overhead, watched them go far to the left, and heard them bombing on the main high road. We had worked through a network of secondary roads and had taken many roads that were blind, but had always, by backing up and finding another road, gotten closer to Udine. Now Amo's car, in backing so that we might get out of a blind road, had gotten into the soft earth at the side, and the wheels, spinning, had dug deeper and deeper until the car rested on its differential. The thing to do now was to dig out in front of the wheels, put in brush so that the chains could grip, and then push until the car was on the road. We were all down on the road around the car. The 2 sergeants looked at the car and examined the wheels. Then they started off down the road without a word. I went after them. Come on, I said. Cut some brush. We have to go, one said. Get busy, I said, and cut brush. We have to go, one said. The other said nothing. They were in a hurry to start. They would not look at me. I order you to come back to the car and cut brush, I said. The one sergeant turned. We have to go on. In a little while you will be cut off. You can't order us. You're not our officer. I order you to cut brush, I said. They turned and started down the road. Halt, I said. They kept on down the muddy road, the hedge on either side. I order you to halt, I called. They went a little faster. I opened up my holster, took the pistol, aimed at the one who had talked the most, and fired. I missed and they both started to run. I shot 3 times and dropped one. The other went through the hedge and was out of sight. I fired at him through the hedge as he ran across the field. The pistol clicked empty and I put in another clip. I saw it was too far to shoot at the second sergeant. He was far across the field, running, his head held low. I commenced to reload the empty clip. Bonello came up. Let me go finish him, he said. I handed him the pistol and he walked down to where the sergeant of engineers lay face down across the road. Bonello leaned over, put the pistol against the man's head and pulled the trigger. The pistol did not fire. You have to cock it, I said. He cocked it and fired twice. He took hold of the sergeant's legs and pulled him to the side of the road so he lay beside the hedge. He came back and handed me the pistol. The son of a bitch, he said. He looked toward the sergeant. You see me shoot him, Tenente? We've got to get the brush quickly, I said. Did I hit the other one at all? I don't think so, Imo said. He was too far away to hit with a pistol. The dirty scum, Piani said. We were all cutting twigs and branches. Everything had been taken out of the car. Bonello was digging out in front of the wheels. When we were ready, Imo started the car and put it into gear. The wheels spun round, throwing brush and mud. Bonello and I pushed until we could feel our joints crack. The car would not move. Rock her back and forth, Barto, I said. He drove the engine in reverse, then forward. The wheels only dug in deeper. Then the car was resting on the differential again, and the wheels spun freely in the holes they had dug. I straightened up. We'll try her with a rope, I said. I don't think it's any use, Tenente. You can't get a straight pull. We have to try it, I said. She won't come out any other way. Piani's and Bonello's cars could only move straight ahead down the narrow road. We roped both cars together and pulled. The wheels only pulled sideways against the ruts. It's no good, I shouted. Stop it. Piani and Bonello got down from their cars and came back. Imo got down. The girls were up the road about 40 yards sitting on a stone wall. What do you say, Tenente? Bonello asked. We'll dig out and try once more with the brush, I said. I looked down the road. It was my fault. I had led them up here. The sun was almost out from behind the clouds and the body of the sergeant lay beside the hedge. We'll put his coat and cape under, I said. Bonello went to get them. I cut brush and Amo and Piani dug out in front and between the wheels. I cut the cape, then ripped it in two and laid it under the wheel in the mud, then piled brush for the wheels to catch. We were ready to start and Amo got up on the seat and started the car. The wheels spun and we pushed and pushed, but it wasn't any use. It's Ed, I said. Is there anything you want in the car, Bardo? Imo climbed up with Bonello, carrying the cheese and 2 bottles of wine and his cape. Bonello, sitting behind the wheel, was looking through the pockets of the sergeant's coat. Better throw the coat away, I said. What about Barto's virgins? They can get in the back, Piani said. I don't think we're going far. I opened the back door of the ambulance. Come on, I said. Get in. The two girls climbed in and sat in the corner. They seemed to have taken no notice of the shooting. I looked back up the road. The sergeant lay in his dirty, long-sleeved underwear. I got up with Piani and we started. We were going to try to cross the field. When the road entered the field, I got down and walked ahead. If we could get across, there was a road on the other side. We could not get across. It was too soft and muddy for the cars. When they were finally and completely stalled, the wheels dug into the hubs. We left them in the field and started on foot for Udine. When we came to the road which led back toward the main highway, I pointed down it to the two girls. "Go down there," I said. "You'll meet people." They looked at me. I took out my pocketbook and gave them each a 10-lira note. "Go down there," I said, pointing. "Friends, family." They did not understand, but they held the money tightly and started down the road. They looked back as though they were afraid I might take the money back. I watched them go down the road, their shawls close around them, looking back apprehensively at us. The three drivers were laughing. "How much will you give me to go in that direction, Tenente?" Bonello asked. "They're better off in a bunch of people than alone if they catch them," I said. "Give me 200 lire and I'll walk straight back toward Austria," Bonello said. "They'd take it away from you," Piani said. "Maybe the war will be over," Imo said. We were going up the road as fast as we could. The sun was trying to come through. Beside the road were mulberry trees. Through the trees, I could see our two big moving vans of cars stuck in the field. Piani looked back too. "They'll have to build a road to get them out," he said. "I wish to Christ we had bicycles," Bonello said. "Do they ride bicycles in America?" Imo asked. "They used to." "Here it is a great thing," Imo said. "A bicycle is a splendid thing." "I wish to Christ we had bicycles," Bonello said. "I'm no walker." "Is that firing?" I asked. "I thought I could hear firing a long way away." "I don't know," Imo said. He listened. "I think so," I said. "The first thing we will see will be the cavalry," Piani said. "I don't think they've got any cavalry." "I hope to Christ not," Bonello said. "I don't want to be stuck on a lance by any cavalry." "You certainly shot that Sergeant Tenente," Piani said. We were walking fast. "I killed him," Bonello said. "I never killed anybody in this war, and all my life I've wanted to kill a sergeant." "You killed him on the side all right," Piani said. "He wasn't flying very fast when you killed him?" "Never mind. That's one thing I can always remember. I killed that of a sergeant." "What will you say in confession?" Imo asked. "I'll say, bless me, Father, I killed a sergeant." They all laughed. "He's an anarchist," Piani said. "He doesn't go to church." "Piani's an anarchist too," Bonello said. "Are you really anarchists?" I asked. "No, Tenente, we're socialists. We come from Imola." "Haven't you ever been there?" "No." "By Christ, it's a fine place, Tenente. You come there after the war and we'll show you something." "Are you all socialists?" "Everybody." "Is it a fine town?" "Wonderful. You never saw a town like that." "How did you get to be socialists?" "We're all socialists. Everybody is a socialist. We've always been socialists." "You come, Tenente. We'll make you a socialist too." Ahead, the road turned off to the left, and there was a little hill, and beyond a stone wall, an apple orchard. As the road went uphill, they ceased talking. We walked along together, all going fast against time. Chapter 30. Later, we were on a road that led to a river. There was a long line of abandoned trucks and carts on the road leading up to the bridge. No one was in sight. The river was high, and the bridge had been blown up in the center. The stone arch was fallen into the river, and the brown water was going over it. We went on up the bank looking for a place to cross. Up ahead, I knew there was a railway bridge, and I thought we might be able to get across there. The path was wet and muddy. We did not see any troops, only abandoned trucks and stores. Along the river bank, there was nothing and no one but the wet brush and muddy ground. We went up to the bank, and finally we saw the railway bridge. "What a beautiful bridge," Imo said. It was a long, plain iron bridge across what was usually a dry riverbed. "We'd better hurry and get across before they blow it up," I said. "There's nobody to blow it up," Piani said. "They're all gone." "It's probably mined," Bonello said. "You cross first, Tenente." "Listen to the anarchist," Imo said. "Make him go first." "I'll go," I said. "It won't be mine to blow up with one man." "You see," Piani said, "that is brains. Why haven't you brains, anarchist?" "If I had brains, I wouldn't be here," Bonello said. "That's pretty good, Tenente," Imo said. "That's pretty good," I said. We were close to the bridge now. The sky had clouded over again, and it was raining a little. The bridge looked long and solid. We climbed up the embankment. "Come one at a time," I said, and started across the bridge. I watched the ties and the rails for any tripwires or signs of explosive, but I saw nothing. Down below the gaps in the ties, the river ran muddy and fast. Ahead, across the wet countryside, I could see Udine in the rain. Across the bridge, I looked back. Just up the river was another bridge. As I watched, a yellow mud-colored motorcar crossed it. The sides of the bridge were high, and the body of the car, once on, was out of sight. But I saw the heads of the driver, the man on the seat with him, and the two men on the rear seat. They all wore German helmets. Then the car was over the bridge and out of sight behind the trees and the abandoned vehicles on the road. I waved to Amo, who was crossing, and to the others to come on. I climbed down and crouched beside the railway embankment. Amo came down with me. "Did you see the car?" I asked. "No, we were watching you." A German staff car crossed on the upper bridge. "A staff car?" "Yes." "Holy Mary." The others came, and we all crouched in the mud behind the embankment, looking across the rails at the bridge, the line of trees, the ditch, and the road. "Do you think we're cut off then, Tenente?" "I don't know. All I know is a German staff car went along that road." "You don't feel funny, Tenente? You haven't got strange feelings in the head?" "Don't be funny, Bonello." "What about a drink?" Piani asked. "If we're cut off, we might as well have a drink." He unhooked his canteen and uncorked it. "Look, look," Imo said and pointed toward the road. Along the top of the stone bridge, we could see German helmets moving. They were bent forward and moved smoothly, almost supernaturally, along. As they came off the bridge, we saw them. They were bicycle troops. I saw the faces of the first two. They were ruddy and healthy-looking. Their helmets came eye-ow down over their foreheads and the side of their faces. Their carbines were clipped to the frame of the bicycles. Stick bombs hung handle down from their belts. Their helmets and their gray uniforms were wet, and they rode easily, looking ahead and to both sides. There were two, then four in line, then two, then almost a dozen, then another dozen, then one alone. They did not talk, but we could not have heard them because of the noise from the river. They were gone out of sight up the road. "Holy Mary," Amos said. "They were Germans," Piani said. "Those weren't Austrians." "Why isn't there somebody here to stop them?" I said. "Why haven't they blown the bridge up? Why aren't there machine guns along this embankment?" "You tell us, Tenente," Bonello said. I was very angry. The whole bloody thing is crazy. Down below they blow up a little bridge. Here they leave a bridge on the main road. Where is everybody? Don't they try and stop them at all? "You tell us, Tenente," Bonello said. I shut up. It was none of my business. All I had to do was to get to Pordenone with 3 ambulances. I had failed at that. All I had to do now was get to Pordenone. I probably could not even get to Udine. The hell I couldn't. The thing to do was to be calm and not get shot or captured. "Didn't you have a canteen open?" I asked Piani. He handed it to me. I took a long drink. "We might as well start," I said. "There's no hurry, though. Do you want to eat something?" "This is no place to stay," Bonello said. "All right, we'll start." "Should we keep on this side, out of sight?" "We'd be better off on top. They may come along this bridge too. We don't want them on top of us before we see them." We walked along the railroad track. On both sides of us stretched the wet plain. Ahead, across the plain, was the hill of Udine. The roofs fell away from the castle on the hill. We could see the campanile and the clock tower. There were many mulberry trees in the fields. Ahead, I saw a place where the rails were torn up. The ties had been dug out too and thrown down the embankment. "Down, down," Imo said. We dropped down beside the embankment. There was another group of bicyclists passing along the road. I looked over the edge and saw them go on. "They saw us, but they went on," Imo said. "We'll get killed up there, Tenente," Bonello said. "They don't want us," I said. "They're after something else. We're in more danger if they should come on us suddenly." "I'd rather walk here out of sight," Bonello said. "All right, we'll walk along the tracks." "Do you think we can get through?" Amo asked. "Sure. There aren't very many of them yet. We'll go through in the dark." "What was that staff car doing?" "Christ knows," I said. We kept on up the tracks. Bonello tired of walking in the mud of the embankment and came up with the rest of us. The railway moved south away from the highway now, and we could not see what passed along the road. A short bridge over a canal was blown up, but we climbed across on what was left of the span. We heard firing ahead of us. We came up on the railway beyond the canal. It went on straight toward the town across the low fields. We could see the line of the other railway ahead of us. To the north was the main road where we had seen the cyclists. To the south there was a small branch road across the fields with thick trees on each side. I thought we had better cut to the south and work around the town that way and across country toward Campoformio and the main road to the Tagliamento. We could avoid the main line of the retreat by keeping to the secondary roads beyond Udine. I knew there were plenty of side roads across the plain. I started down the embankment. "Come on," I said. We would make for the side road and work to the south of the town. We all started down the embankment. A shot was fired at us from the side road. The bullet went into the mud of the embankment. "Go on back," I shouted. I started up the embankment, slipping in the mud. The drivers were ahead of me. I went up the embankment as fast as I could go. 2 more shots came from the thick brush, and Imo, as he was crossing the tracks, lurched, tripped, and fell face down. We pulled him down on the other side and turned him over. "His head ought to be uphill," I said. Piani moved him around. He lay in the mud on the side of the embankment, his feet pointing downhill, breathing blood irregularly. The 3 of us squatted over him in the rain. He was hit low in the back of the neck, and the bullet had ranged upward and come out under the right eye. He died while I was stopping up the 2 holes. Piani laid his head down, wiped at his face with a piece of the emergency dressing, then let it alone. He said. "They weren't Germans," I said. "There can't be any Germans over there." "Italians," Piani said, using the word as an epithet. "Italiani." Bonello said nothing. He was sitting beside Amo, not looking at him. Piani picked up Imo's cap where it had rolled down the embankment and put it over his face. He took out his canteen. "Do you want a drink?" Piani handed Bonello the canteen. "No," Bonello said. He turned to me. "That might have happened to us any time on the railway tracks." No, I said. It was because we started across the field. Bonello shook his head. Imo's dead, he said. Who's dead next, Tenente? Where do we go now? Those were Italians that shot, I said. They weren't Germans. I suppose if they were Germans, they'd have killed all of us, Bonello said. We are in more danger from Italians than Germans, I said. The rear guard are afraid of everything. The Germans know what they're after. You reason it out, Tenente, Bonello said. Where do we go now? Piani asked. We better lie up someplace till it's dark. If we could get south, we'd be all right. They'd have to shoot us all to prove they were right the first time, Bonello said. I'm not going to try them. We'll find a place to lie up as near to Udine as we can get and then go through when it's dark. Let's go then, Bonello said. We went down the north side of the embankment. I looked back. Amo lay in the mud with the angle of the embankment. He was quite small and his arms were by his side, his putty-wrapped legs and muddy boots together, his cap over his face. He looked very dead. It was raining. I had liked him as well as anyone I ever knew. I had his papers in my pocket and would write to his family. Ahead across the fields was a farmhouse. There were trees around it, and the farm buildings were built against the house. There was a balcony along the second floor held up by columns. We better keep a little way apart, I said. I'll go ahead. I started toward the farmhouse. There was a path across the field. Crossing the field, I did not know but that someone would fire on us from the trees near the farmhouse or from the farmhouse itself. I walked toward it, seeing it very clearly. The balcony of the second floor merged into the barn, and there was hay coming out between the columns. The courtyard was of stone blocks, and all the trees were dripping with the rain. There was a big, empty two-wheeled cart, the shafts tipped high up in the rain. I came to the courtyard, crossed it, and stood under the shelter of the balcony. The door of the house was open, and I went in. Bonello and Piani came in after me. It was dark inside. I went back to the kitchen. There were ashes of a fire on the big, open hearth. The pots hung over the ashes, but they were empty. I looked around, but I could not find anything to eat. We ought to lie up in the barn, I said. Do you think you could find anything to eat, Piani, and bring it up there? I'll look, Piani said. I'll look too, Bonello said. All right, I said. I'll go up and look at the barn. I found a stone stairway that went up from the stable underneath. The stable smelt dry and pleasant in the rain. The cattle were all gone, probably driven off when they left. The barn was half full of hay. There were 2 windows in the roof. One was blocked with boards. The other was a narrow dormer window on the north side. There was a chute so that hay might be pitched down to the cattle. Beams crossed the opening down into the main floor where the hay carts drove in when the hay was hauled in to be pitched up. I heard the rain on the roof and smelled the hay, and, when I went down, the clean smell of dry dung in the stable. We could pry a board loose and see out of the south window down into the courtyard. The other window looked out on the field toward the north. We could get out of either window onto the roof and down, or go down the hay chute if the stairs were impractical. It was a big barn, and we could hide in the hay if we heard anyone. It seemed like a good place. I was sure we could have gotten through to the south if they had not fired on us. It was impossible that there were Germans there. They were coming from the north and down the road from Cividale. They could not have come through from the south. The Italians were even more dangerous. They were frightened and firing on anything they saw. Last night on the retreat, we had heard that there had been many Germans in Italian uniforms mixing with the retreat in the north. I did not believe it. That was one of those things you always heard in the war. It was one of the things the enemy always did to you. You did not know anyone who went over in German uniform to confuse them. Maybe they did, but it sounded difficult. I did not believe the Germans did it. I did not believe they had to. There was no need to confuse our retreat. The size of the army and the fewness of the roads did that. Nobody gave any orders, let alone Germans. Still, they would shoot us for Germans. They shot Amo. The hay smelled good, and lying in a barn in the hay took away all the years in between. We had lain in hay and talked and shot sparrows with an air rifle when they perched in the triangle cut high up in the wall of the barn. The barn was gone now, and 1 year they had cut the hemlock woods, and there were only stumps, dried treetops, branches, and fireweed where the woods had been. You could not go back. If you did not go forward, what happened? You never got back to Milan. And if you got back to Milan, what happened? I listened to the firing to the north toward Udine. I could hear machine gun firing. There was no shelling. That was something. They must have gotten some troops along the road. I looked down in the half-light of the hay barn and saw Piani standing on the hauling floor. He had a long sausage, a jar of something, and 2 bottles of wine under his arm. "Come up," I said. "There's the ladder." Then I realized that I should help him with the things and went down. I was vague in the head from lying in the hay. I had been nearly asleep. "Where's Bonello?" I asked. "I'll tell you," Piani said. We went up the ladder. Up on the hay, we set the things down. Piani took out his knife with the corkscrew and drew the cork on a wine bottle. "They have sealing wax on it," he said. "It must be good." He smiled. "Where's Bonello?" I asked. Piani looked at me. "He went away, Tenente," he said. "He wanted to be a prisoner." I did not say anything. He was afraid we would get killed. I held the bottle of wine and did not say anything. "You see, we don't believe in the war anyway, Tenente." "Why didn't you go?" I asked. "I did not want to leave you." "Where did he go?" "I don't know, Tenente. He went away." "All right," I said. "Will you cut the sausage?" Piani looked at me in the half-light. "I cut it while we were talking," he said. We sat in the hay and ate the sausage and drank the wine. It must have been wine they had saved for a wedding. It was so old that it was losing its color. "You look out of this window, Luigi," I said. "I'll go look out the other window." We had each been drinking out of one of the bottles, and I took my bottle with me and went over and lay flat on the hay and looked out the narrow window at the wet country. I do not know what I expected to see, but I did not see anything except the fields and the bare mulberry trees and the rain falling. I drank the wine, and it did not make me feel good. They had kept it too long, and it had gone to pieces and lost its quality and color. I watched it get dark outside. The darkness came very quickly. It would be a black night with the rain. When it was dark, there was no use watching anymore, so I went over to Piani. He was lying asleep, and I did not wake him but sat down beside him for a while. He was a big man, and he slept heavily. After a while, I woke him, and we started. That was a very strange night. I do not know what I had expected, death perhaps, and shooting in the dark and running. But nothing happened. We waited, lying flat beyond the ditch along the main road while a German battalion passed. Then when they were gone, we crossed the road and went on to the north. We were very close to Germans twice in the rain, but they did not see us. We got past the town to the north without seeing any Italians. Then, after a while, came on the main channels of the retreat and walked all night toward the Tagliamento. I had not realized how gigantic the retreat was. The whole country was moving, as well as the army. We walked all night, making better time than the vehicles. My leg ached, and I was tired, but we made good time. It seemed so silly for Bonello to have decided to be taken prisoner. There was no danger. We had walked through 2 armies without incident. If Amo had not been killed, there would never have seemed to be any danger. No one had bothered us when we were in plain sight along the railway. The killing came suddenly and unreasonably. I wondered where Bonello was. How do you feel, Tenente? Piani asked. We were going along the side of a road crowded with vehicles and troops. Fine. I'm tired of this walking. Well, all we have to do is walk now. We don't have to worry. Bonello was a fool. He was a fool, all right. What will you do about him, Tenente? I don't know. Can't you just put him down as taken prisoner? I don't know. You see, if the war went on, they would make bad trouble for his family. The war won't go on, a soldier said. We're going home. The war is over. Everybody's going home. We're all going home. Come on, Tenente, Piani said. He wanted to get past them. Tenente? Who's a tenente? A bassogli ufficiali. Down with the officers. Piani took me by the arm. I better call you by your name, he said. They might try and make trouble. They've shot some officers. We worked up past them. I won't make a report that will make trouble for his family. I went on with our conversation. If the war's over, it makes no difference, Piani said. But I don't believe it's over. It's too good that it should be over. We'll know pretty soon, I said. I don't believe it's over. They all think it's over, but I don't believe it. Viva la pace, a soldier shouted out. We're going home. It would be fine if we all went home, Piani said. Wouldn't you like to go home? Yes. We'll never go. I don't think it's over. Andiamo a casa, a soldier shouted. They throw away their rifles, Piani said. They take them off and drop them down while they're marching. Then they shout. They ought to keep their rifles. They think if they throw away their rifles, they can't make them fight. In the dark and the rain, making our way along the side of the road, I could see that many of the troops still had their rifles. They stuck up above the capes. What brigade are you? An officer called out. Brigata di Pace, someone shouted. Peace Brigade. The officer said nothing. What does he say? What does the officer say? Down with the officer. Viva la pace. Come on, Piani said. We passed 2 British ambulances, abandoned in the block of vehicles. They're from Gorizia, Piani said. I know the cars. They got further than we did. They started earlier. I wonder where the drivers are. Up ahead, probably. The Germans have stopped outside Udine, I said. These people will all get across the river. Yes, Piani said. That's why I think the war will go on. The Germans could come on, I said. I wonder why they don't come on. I don't know. I don't know anything about this kind of war. They have to wait for their transport, I suppose. I don't know, Piani said. Alone, he was much gentler. When he was with the others, he was a very rough talker. Are you married, Luigi? You know I am married. Is that why you did not want to be a prisoner? That is one reason. Are you married, Tenente? No. Neither is Bonello. You can't tell anything by a man's being married. But I should think a married man would want to get back to his wife, I said. I would be glad to talk about wives. Yes. How are your feet? They're sore enough. Before daylight, we reached the bank of the Tagliamento and followed down along the flooded river to the bridge where all the traffic was crossing. They ought to be able to hold at this river, Piani said. In the dark, the flood looked high. The water swirled and it was wide. The wooden bridge was nearly 3/4 of a mile across, and the river, that usually ran in narrow channels in the wide stony bed far below the bridge, was close under the wooden planking. We went along the bank and then worked our way into the crowd that were crossing the bridge. Crossing slowly in the rain a few feet above the flood, pressed tight in the crowd, the box of an artillery caisson just ahead, I looked over the side and watched the river. Now that we could not go our own pace, I felt very tired. There was no exhilaration in crossing the bridge. I wondered what it would be like if a plane bombed it in the daytime. "Piani," I said. "Here I am, Tenente." He was a little ahead in the jam. No one was talking. They were all trying to get across as soon as they could, thinking only of that. We were almost across. At the far end of the bridge, there were officers and carabinieri standing on both sides flashing lights. I saw them silhouetted against the skyline. As we came close to them, I saw one of the officers point to a man in the column. A carabiniere went in after him and came out holding the man by the arm. He took him away from the road. We came almost opposite them. The officers were scrutinizing everyone in the column, sometimes speaking to each other, going forward to flash a light in someone's face. They took someone else out just before we came opposite. I saw the man. He was a lieutenant colonel. I saw the stars in the box on his sleeve as they flashed a light on him. His hair was gray and he was short and fat. The carabiniere pulled him in behind the line of officers. As we came opposite, I saw one or two of them look at me. Then one pointed at me and spoke to a carabiniere. I saw the carabiniere start for me, come through the edge of the column toward me, then felt him take me by the collar. "What's the matter with you?" I said and hit him in the face. I saw his face under the hat, upturned mustaches and blood coming down his cheek. Another one dove in toward us. "What's the matter with you?" I said. He did not answer. He was watching a chance to grab me. I put my arm behind me to loosen my pistol. "Don't you know you can't touch an officer?" The other one grabbed me from behind and pulled my arm up so that it twisted in the socket. I turned with him, and the other one grabbed me around the neck. I kicked his shins and got my left knee into his groin. "Shoot him if he resists," I heard someone say. "What's the meaning of this?" I tried to shout, but my voice was not very loud. They had me at the side of the road now. "Shoot him if he resists," an officer said. "Take him over back." "Who are you?" "You'll find out." "Who are you?" "Battle police," another officer said. "Why don't you ask me to step over instead of having one of these airplanes grab me?" They did not answer. They did not have to answer. They were battle police. "Take him back there with the others," the first officer said. "You see, he speaks Italian with an accent." "So do you, I said. "Take him back with the others," the first officer said. They took me down behind the line of officers below the road toward a group of people in a field by the riverbank. As we walked toward them, shots were fired. I saw flashes of the rifles and heard the reports. We came up to the group. There were 4 officers standing together with a man in front of them with a carabiniere on each side of him. A group of men were standing guarded by carabinieri. 4 other carabinieri stood near the questioning officers, leaning on their carbines. They were wide-hatted carabinieri. The 2 who had me shoved me in with the group waiting to be questioned. I looked at the man the officers were questioning. He was the fat, gray-haired little lieutenant colonel they had taken out of the column. The questioners had all the efficiency, coldness, and command of themselves of Italians who are firing and are not being fired on. "Your brigade?" he told them. "Regiment?" he told them. "Why are you not with your regiment?" he told them. "Do you not know that an officer should be with his troops?" He did. That was all. Another officer spoke. "It is you and such as you that have let the barbarians onto the sacred soil of the fatherland." "I beg your pardon," said the lieutenant colonel. "It is because of treachery such as yours that we have lost the fruits of victory." "Have you ever been in a retreat?" the lieutenant colonel asked. "Italy should never retreat." We stood there in the rain and listened to this. We were facing the officers, and the prisoner stood in front and a little to one side of us. "If you are going to shoot me," the lieutenant colonel said, "please shoot me at once without further questioning. The questioning is stupid." He made the sign of the cross. The officers spoke together. One wrote something on a pad of paper. "Abandoned his troops. Ordered to be shot," he said. 2 carabinieri took the lieutenant colonel to the riverbank. He walked in the rain, an old man with his hat off, a carabinieri on either side. I did not watch them shoot him, but I heard the shots. They were questioning someone else. This officer, too, was separated from his troops. He was not allowed to make an explanation. He cried when they read the sentence from the pad of paper, and they were questioning another when they shot him. They made a point of being intent on questioning the next man while the man who had been questioned before was being shot. In this way, there was obviously nothing they could do about it. I did not know whether I should wait to be questioned or make a break now. I was obviously a German in Italian uniform. I saw how their minds worked, if they had minds and if they worked. They were all young men and they were saving their country. The Second Army was being reformed beyond the tagliamento. They were executing officers of the rank of major and above who were separated from their troops. They were also dealing summarily with German agitators in Italian uniform. They wore steel helmets. Only 2 of us had steel helmets. Some of the carabinieri had them. The other carabinieri wore the wide hat. Airplanes, we called them. We stood in the rain and were taken out one at a time to be questioned and shot. So far, they had shot everyone they had questioned. The questioners had that beautiful detachment and devotion to stern justice of men dealing in death without being in any danger of it. They were questioning a full colonel of a line regiment. 3 more officers had just been put in with us. Where was his regiment? I looked at the carabinieri. They were looking at the newcomers. The others were looking at the colonel. I ducked down, pushed between 2 men, and ran for the river, my head down. I tripped at the edge and went in with a splash. The water was very cold, and I stayed under as long as I could. I could feel the current swirl me, and I stayed under until I thought I could never come up. The minute I came up, I took a breath and went down again. It was easy to stay under with so much clothing and my boots. When I came up the second time, I saw a piece of timber ahead of me and reached it and held on with one hand. I kept my head behind it and did not even look over it. I did not want to see the bank. There were shots when I ran and shots when I came up the first time. I heard them when I was almost above water. There were no shots now. The piece of timber swung in the current, and I held it with one hand. I looked at the bank. It seemed to be going by very fast. There was much wood in the stream. The water was very cold. We passed the brush of an island above the water. I held onto the timber with both hands and let it take me along. The shore was out of sight now. Chapter 31. You do not know how long you are in a river when the current moves swiftly. It seems a long time, and it may be very short. The water was cold and in flood, and many things passed that had been floated off the banks when the river rose. I was lucky to have a heavy timber to hold on to, and I lay in the icy water with my chin on the wood, holding as easily as I could with both hands. I was afraid of cramps, and I hoped we would move toward the shore. We went down the river in a long curve. It was beginning to be light enough so I could see the bushes along the shoreline. There was a brush island ahead, and the current moved toward the shore. I wondered if I should take off my boots and clothes and try to swim ashore, but decided not to. I had never thought of anything but that I would reach the shore some way, and I would be in a bad position if I landed barefoot. I had to get to Mestre some way. I watched the shore come close, then swing away, then come closer again. We were floating more slowly. The shore was very close now. I could see twigs on the willow bush. The timber swung slowly so that the bank was behind me, and I knew we were in an eddy. We went slowly around. As I saw the bank again, very close now, I tried holding with one arm and kicking and swimming the timber toward the bank with the other, but I did not bring it any closer. I was afraid we would move out of the eddy, and holding with one hand, I drew up my feet so they were against the side of the timber and shoved hard toward the bank. I could see the brush, but even with my momentum and swimming as hard as I could, the current was taking me away. I thought then I would drown because of my boots, but I thrashed and fought through the water, and when I looked up, the bank was coming toward me, and I kept thrashing and swimming in a heavy-footed panic until I reached it. I hung to the willow branch and did not have strength to pull myself up, but I knew I would not drown now. It had never occurred to me on the timber that I might drown. I felt hollow and sick in my stomach and chest from the effort, and I held to the branches and waited. When the sick feeling was gone, I pulled into the willow bushes and rested again, my arms around some brush, holding tight with my hands to the branches. Then I crawled out, pushed on through the willows and onto the bank. It was half daylight and I saw no one. I lay flat on the bank and heard the river and the rain. After a while, I got up and started along the bank. I knew there was no bridge across the river until Latisana. I thought I might be opposite San Vito. I began to think out what I should do. Ahead there was a ditch running into the river. I went toward it. So far I had seen no one, and I sat down by some bushes along the bank of the ditch and took off my shoes and emptied them of water. I took off my coat, took my wallet with my papers and my money all wet in it out of the inside pocket and then wrung the coat out. I took off my trousers and wrung them too, then my shirt and underclothing. I slapped and rubbed myself and then dressed again. I had lost my cap. Before I put on my coat, I cut the cloth stars off my sleeves and put them in the inside pocket with my money. My money was wet but was all right. I counted it. There were 3,000 and some lyre. My clothes felt wet and clammy, and I slapped my arms to keep the circulation going. I had woven underwear, and I did not think I would catch cold if I kept moving. They had taken my pistol at the road, and I put the holster under my coat. I had no cape, and it was cold in the rain. I started up the bank of the canal. It was daylight, and the country was wet, low, and dismal-looking. The fields were bare and wet. A long way away, I could see a campanile rising out of the plain. I came up onto a road. Ahead, I saw some troops coming down the road. I limped along the side of the road, and they passed me and paid no attention to me. They were a machine gun detachment going up toward the river. I went on down the road. That day, I crossed the Venetian plain. It is a low, level country, and under the rain, it is even flatter. Toward the sea, there are salt marshes and very few roads. The roads all go along the river mouths to the sea, and to cross the country, you must go along the paths beside the canals. I was working across the country from the north to the south, and had crossed 2 railway lines and many roads, and finally I came out at the end of a path onto a railway line where it ran beside a marsh. It was the main line from Venice to Trieste, with a high solid embankment, a solid roadbed, and double track. Down the tracks, away was a flag station, and I could see soldiers on guard. Up the line there was a bridge over a stream that flowed into the marsh. I could see a guard, too, at the bridge. Crossing the fields to the north, I had seen a train pass on this railroad, visible a long way across the flat plain, and I thought a train might come from Portogruaro. I watched the guards and lay down on the embankment so that I could see both ways along the track. The guard at the bridge walked away up the line toward where Flay, then turned and went back toward the bridge. I lay and was hungry and waited for the train. The one I had seen was so long that the engine moved it very slowly, and I was sure I could get aboard it. After I had almost given up hoping for one, I saw a train coming. The engine, coming straight on, grew larger slowly. I looked at the guard at the bridge. He was walking on the near side of the bridge, but on the other side of the tracks. That would put him out of sight when the train passed. I watched the engine come nearer. It was working hard. I could see there were many cars. I knew there would be guards on the train, and I tried to see where they were, but keeping out of sight, I could not. The engine was almost to where I was lying. when it came opposite, working and puffing even on the level, and I saw the engineer pass, I stood up and stepped up close to the passing cars. If the guards were watching, I was a less suspicious object standing beside the track. Several closed freight cars passed. Then I saw a low, open car of the sort they call gondolas coming, covered with canvas. I stood until it had almost passed, then jumped and caught the rear handrods and pulled up. I crawled down between the gondola and the shelter of the high freight car behind. I did not think anyone had seen me. I was holding to the handrods and crouching low, my feet on the coupling. We were almost opposite the bridge. I remembered the guard. As we passed him, he looked at me. He was a boy, and his helmet was too big for him. I stared at him contemptuously, and he looked away. He thought I had something to do with the train. We were past. I saw him still looking uncomfortable, watching the other cars pass, and I stooped to see how the canvas was fastened. It had grummets and was laced down at the edge with cord. I took out my knife, cut the cord, and put my arm under. There were hard bulges under the canvas that tightened in the rain. I looked up and ahead. There was a guard on the freight car ahead, but he was looking forward. I let go of the handrails and ducked under the canvas. My forehead hit something that gave me a violent bump, and I felt blood on my face, but I crawled on in and lay flat. Then I turned around and fastened down the canvas. I was in under the canvas with guns. They smelled cleanly of oil and grease. I lay and listened to the rain on the canvas and the clicking of the car over the rails. There was a little light came through, and I lay and looked at the guns. They had their canvas jackets on. I thought they must have been sent ahead from the Third Army. The bump on my forehead was swollen, and I stopped the bleeding by lying still and letting it coagulate, then picked away the dried blood except over the cut. It was nothing. I had no handkerchief, but feeling with my fingers, I washed away where the dried blood had been, with rainwater that dripped from the canvas, and wiped it clean with the sleeve of my coat. I did not want to look conspicuous. I knew I would have to get out before they got to Mestre because they would be taking care of these guns. They had no guns to lose or forget about. I was terrifically hungry. Chapter 32. Lying on the floor of the flat car with the guns beside me under the canvas, I was wet, cold, and very hungry. Finally, I rolled over and lay flat on my stomach with my head on my arms. My knee was stiff, but it had been very satisfactory. Valentini had done a fine job. I had done half the retreat on foot and swum part of the tagliamento with his knee. It was his knee, all right. The other knee was mine. Doctors did things to you, and then it was not your body anymore. The head was mine, and the inside of the belly. It was very hungry in there. I could feel it turn over on itself. The head was mine, but not to use, not to think with, only to remember and not too much remember. I could remember Catherine, but I knew I would get crazy if I thought about her when I was not sure, yet I would see her, so I would not think about her, only about her a little. Only about her with the car going slowly and clickingly, and some light through the canvas and my lying with Catherine on the floor of the car. Hard as the floor of the car to lie not thinking, only feeling, having been away too long, the clothes wet and the floor moving only a little each time, and lonesome inside and alone with wet clothing and hard floor for a wife. You did not love the floor of a flat car nor guns with canvas jackets and the smell of Vaseline metal or a canvas that rain leaked through, although it is very fine under a canvas and pleasant with guns. But you loved someone else whom now you knew was not even to be pretended there. You seeing now very clearly and coldly, not so coldly as clearly and emptily. You saw emptily, lying on your stomach, having been present when one army moved back and another came forward. You had lost your cars and your men as a floor walker loses the stock of his department in a fire. There was, however, no insurance. You were out of it now. You had no more obligation. If they shot floor walkers after a fire in the department store because they spoke with an accent they had always had, then certainly the floor walkers would not be expected to return when the store opened again for business. They might seek other employment, if there was any other employment and the police did not get them. Anger was washed away in the river along with any obligation. Although that ceased when the carabiniere put his hands on my collar. I would like to have had the uniform off, although I did not care much about the outward forms. I had taken off the stars, but that was for convenience. It was no point of honor. I was not against them. I was through. I wished them all the luck. There were the good ones, and the brave ones, and the calm ones, and the sensible ones, and they deserved it. But it was not my show anymore, and I wished this bloody train would get to Mestre and I would eat and stop thinking. I would have to stop. Piani would tell them they had shot me. They went through the pockets and took the papers of the people they shot. They would not have my papers. They might call me drowned. I wondered what they would hear in the States. Dead from wounds and other causes. Good Christ, I was hungry. I wondered what had become of the priest at the mess. And Rinaldi. He was probably at Pordenone, if they had not gone further back. Well, I would never see him now. I would never see any of them now. That life was over. I did not think he had syphilis. It was not a serious disease anyway if you took it in time, they said. But he would worry. I would worry too if I had it. Anyone would worry. I was not made to think. I was made to eat. My God, yes, eat and drink and sleep with Catherine. Tonight, maybe. No, that was impossible. But tomorrow night, and a good meal and sheets, and never going away again except together. Probably have to go damned quickly. She would go. I knew she would go. When would we go? That was something to think about. It was getting dark. I lay and thought where we would go. There were many places. Book 4. Chapter 33. I dropped off the train in Milan as it slowed to come into the station early in the morning before it was light. I crossed the track and came out between some buildings and down onto the street. A wine shop was open, and I went in for some coffee. It smelled of early morning, of swept dust, spoons and coffee glasses and the wet circles left by wine glasses. The proprietor was behind the bar. 2 soldiers sat at a table. I stood at the bar and drank a glass of coffee and ate a piece of bread. The coffee was gray with milk, and I skimmed the milk scum off the top with a piece of bread. The proprietor looked at me. "You want a glass of grappa?" "No, thanks." "On me," he said, and poured a small glass and pushed it toward me. "What's happening at the front?" I would not know. "They are drunk," he said, moving his hand toward the 2 soldiers. I could believe him. They looked drunk. "Tell me," he said, "what is happening at the front?" "I would not know about the front. I saw you come down the wall. You came off the train. There is a big retreat. I read the papers. What happens? Is it over?" "I don't think so." He filled the glass with grappa from a short bottle. "If you are in trouble," he said, "I can keep you." "I am not in trouble." "If you are in trouble, stay here with me." "Where does one stay?" "In the building. Many stay here. Any who are in trouble stay here." "Are many in trouble?" "It depends on the trouble. You are a South American?" "No." "Speak Spanish?" "A little." He wiped off the bar. "It is hard now to leave the country, but in no way impossible. I have no wish to leave. You can stay here as long as you want. You will see what sort of man I am. I have to go this morning, but I will remember the address to return." He shook his head. "You won't come back if you talk like that. I thought you were in real trouble." "I am in no trouble, but I value the address of a friend. I put a 10-lira note on the bar to pay for the coffee. Have a grappa with me, I said. It is not necessary. Have one. He poured the 2 glasses. Remember, he said, come here. Do not let other people take you in. Here you are all right. I am sure. You are sure? Yes. He was serious. Then let me tell you one thing. Do not go about with that coat. Why? On the sleeves it shows very plainly where the stars have been cut away. The cloth is a different color. I did not say anything. If you have no papers, I can give you papers. What papers? Leave papers. I have no need for papers. I have papers. All right, he said. But if you need papers, I can get what you wish. How much are such papers? It depends on what they are. The price is reasonable. I don't need any now. He shrugged his shoulders. I'm all right, I said. When I went out, he said, don't forget that I am your friend. No. I will see you again, he said. Good, I said. Outside, I kept away from the station, where there were military police, and picked up a cab at the edge of the little park. I gave the driver the address of the hospital. At the hospital, I went to the porter's lodge. His wife embraced me. He shook my hand. You are back. You are safe. Yes. Have you had breakfast? Yes. How are you, Tenente? How are you? The wife asked. Fine. Won't you have breakfast with us? No, thank you. Tell me, is Miss Barkley here at the hospital now? Miss Barkley? The English lady nurse. His girl, the wife said. She patted my arm and smiled. No, the porter said. She's away. My heart went down. You are sure? I mean the tall, blonde English young lady. I am sure. She's gone to Stresa. When did she go? She went 2 days ago with the other lady English. Good, I said. I wish you to do something for me. Do not tell anyone you have seen me. It is very important. I won't tell anyone, the porter said. I gave him a 10-lira note. He pushed it away. I promise you I will tell no one, he said. I don't want any money. What can we do for you, Signor Tenente? His wife asked. Only that, I said. We are dumb, the porter said. You will let me know anything I can do? Yes, I said. Goodbye. I will see you again. They stood in the door, looking after me. I got into the cab and gave the driver the address of Simmons, one of the men I knew who was studying singing. Simmons lived a long way out in the town toward the Porta Magenta. He was still in bed and sleepy when I went to see him. You get up awfully early, Henry, he said. I came in on the early train. What's all this retreat? Were you at the front? Will you have a cigarette? They're in that box on the table. It was a big room with a bed beside the wall, a piano over on the far side, and a dresser and table. I sat on a chair by the bed. Simmons sat propped up by the pillows and smoked. I'm in a jam, Sim, I said. So am I, he said. I'm always in a jam. Won't you smoke? No, I said. What's the procedure in going to Switzerland? For you? The Italians wouldn't let you out of the country. Yes, I know that. But the Swiss, what will they do? They intern you. I know, but what's the mechanics of it? Nothing. It's very simple. You can go anywhere. I think you just have to report or something. Why? Are you fleeing the police? Nothing definite yet. Don't tell me if you don't want. But it would be interesting to hear. Nothing happens here. I was a great flop at Piacenza. I'm awfully sorry. Oh yes, I went very badly. I sung well too. I'm going to try it again at the Lyrico here. I'd like to be there. You're awfully polite. You aren't in a bad mess, are you? I don't know. Don't tell me if you don't want. How do you happen to be away from the bloody front? I think I'm through with it. Good boy. I always knew you had sense. Can I help you anyway? You're awfully busy. Not a bit of it, my dear Henry. Not a bit of it. I'd be happy to do anything. You're about my size. Would you go out and buy me an outfit of civilian clothes? I've clothes, but they're all at Rome. You did live there, didn't you? It's a filthy place. How did you ever live there? I wanted to be an architect. That's no place for that. Don't buy clothes. I'll give you all the clothes you want. I'll fit you out so you'll be a great success. Go in that dressing room. There's a closet. Take anything you want. My dear fellow, you don't want to buy clothes. I'd rather buy them, Sim. My dear fellow, it's easier for me to let you have them than go out and buy them. Have you got a passport? You won't get far without a passport. Yes, I've still got my passport. Then get dressed, my dear fellow, and off to old Helvetia. It's not that simple. I have to go up to Streka first. Ideal, my dear fellow. You just row a boat across. If I wasn't trying to sing, I'd go with you. I'll go yet. You could take up yodeling. My dear fellow, I'll take up yodeling yet. I really can sing, though. That's the strange part. I'll bet you can sing. He lay back in bed, smoking a cigarette. Don't bet too much, but I can sing, though. It's damned funny, but I can. I like to sing. Listen. He roared into Africana, his neck swelling, the veins standing out. I can sing, he said, whether they like it or not. I looked out of the window. I'll go down and let my cab go. Come back up, my dear fellow, and we'll have breakfast. He stepped out of bed, stood straight, took a deep breath, and commenced doing bending exercises. I went downstairs and paid off the cab. Chapter 34. In civilian clothes, I felt a masquerader. I had been in uniform a long time, and I missed the feeling of being held by your clothes. The trousers felt very floppy. I had bought a ticket at Milan for Stresa. I had also bought a new hat. I could not wear Sim's hat, but his clothes were fine. They smelled of tobacco, and as I sat in the compartment and looked out the window, the new hat felt very new, and the clothes very old. I myself felt as sad as the wet Lombard country that was outside through the window. There were some aviators in the compartment who did not think much of me. They avoided looking at me and were very scornful of a civilian my age. I did not feel insulted. In the old days, I would have insulted them and picked a fight. They got off at Gallerate, and I was glad to be alone. I had the paper, but I did not read it, because I did not want to read about the war. I was going to forget the war. I had made a separate peace. I felt damned lonely and was glad when the train got to Stresa. At the station, I had expected to see the porters from the hotels, but there was no one. The season had been over a long time, and no one met the train. I got down from the train with my bag. It was Sim's bag, and very light to carry, being empty except for 2 shirts, and stood under the roof of the station in the rain while the train went on. I found a man in the station and asked him if he knew what hotels were open. The Grand Hotel en des Îles Borromées was open, and several small hotels that stayed open all the year. I started in the rain for the Île Borromée carrying my bag. I saw a carriage coming down the street and signaled to the driver. It was better to arrive in a carriage. We drove up to the carriage entrance of the big hotel, and the concierge came out with an umbrella and was very polite. I took a good room. It was very big and light and looked out on the lake. The clouds were down over the lake, but it would be beautiful with the sunlight. I was expecting my wife, I said. There was a big double bed, a letto matrimoniale with a satin coverlet. The hotel was very luxurious. I went down the long halls, down the wide stairs, through the rooms to the bar. I knew the barman and sat on a high stool and ate salted almonds and potato chips. The martini felt cool and clean. "What are you doing here in Borghese?" the barman asked after he had mixed a second martini. "I am on leave, convalescing leave. There is no one here. I don't know why they keep the hotel open." "Have you been fishing? I've caught some beautiful pieces. Trolling this time of year, you catch some beautiful pieces. Did you ever get the tobacco I sent?" "Yes. Didn't you get my card?" I laughed. I had not been able to get the tobacco. It was American pipe tobacco that he wanted, but my relatives had stopped sending it, or it was being held up. Anyway, it never came. "I'll get some somewhere," I said. "Tell me, have you seen 2 English girls in the town? They came here day before yesterday." "They are not at the hotel. They are nurses. I have seen 2 nurses. Wait a minute. I will find out where they are." "One of them is my wife," I said. "I have come here to meet her. The other is my wife." "I am not joking." "Pardon my stupid joke," he said. I did not understand. He went away and was gone quite a little while. I ate olives, salted almonds, and potato chips, and looked at myself in civilian clothes in the mirror behind the bar. The bartender came back. "They are at the little hotel near the station," he said. "How about some sandwiches?" "I'll ring for some. You understand there's nothing here, now there are no people." "Isn't there really anyone at all?" "Yes, there are a few people." The sandwiches came and I ate 3 and drank a couple more martinis. I had never tasted anything so cool and clean. They made me feel civilized. I had had too much red wine, bread, cheese, bad coffee, and grappa. I sat on the high stool before the pleasant mahogany, the brass, and the mirrors, and did not think at all. The barman asked me some question. "Don't talk about the war," I said. The war was a long way away. Maybe there wasn't any war. There was no war here. Then I realized it was over for me, but I did not have the feeling that it was really over. I had the feeling of a boy who thinks of what is happening at a certain hour at the schoolhouse from which he has played truant. Catherine and Helen Ferguson were at supper when I came to their hotel. Standing in the hallway, I saw them at table. Catherine's face was away from me, and I saw the line of her hair and her cheek and her lovely neck and shoulders. Ferguson was talking. She stopped when I came in. "My God," she said. "Hello," I said. "Why, it's you," Catherine said. Her face lighted up. She looked too happy to believe it. I kissed her. Catherine blushed, and I sat down at the table. "You're a fine mess," Ferguson said. "What are you doing here? Have you eaten?" "No." The girl who was serving the meal came in, and I told her to bring a plate for me. Catherine looked at me all the time, her eyes happy. "What are you doing in mufti?" Ferguson asked. "I'm in the cabinet." "You're in some mess." "Cheer up, Fergie. Cheer up just a little." "I'm not cheered by seeing you. I know the mess you've gotten this girl into. You're no cheerful sight to me." Catherine smiled at me and touched me with her foot under the table. "No one got me in a mess, Fergie. I get in my own messes." "I can't stand him," Ferguson said. "He's done nothing but ruin you with his sneaking Italian tricks. Americans are worse than Italians." "The Scotch are such a moral people," Catherine said. "I don't mean that. I mean his Italian sneakiness." "Am I sneaky, Fergie?" "You are. You're worse than sneaky. You're like a snake with an Italian uniform with a cape around your neck." "I haven't got an Italian uniform now." "That's just another example of your sneakiness. You had a love affair all summer and got this girl with child, and now I suppose you'll sneak off." I smiled at Catherine and she smiled at me. "We'll both sneak off," she said. "You're 2 of the same thing," Ferguson said. "I'm ashamed of you, Catherine Barkley. You have no shame and no honor, and you're as sneaky as he is." "Don't, Fergie," Catherine said and patted her hand. Don't denounce me. You know we like each other." "Take your hand away," Ferguson said. Her face was red. "If you had any shame, it would be different. But you're God knows how many months gone with child, and you think it's a joke and are all smiles because your seducers come back. You've no shame and no feelings." She began to cry. Catherine went over and put her arm around her. As she stood comforting Ferguson, I could see no change in her figure. "I don't care," Ferguson sobbed. "I think it's dreadful." There, Fergie," Catherine comforted her. "I'll be ashamed. Don't cry, Fergie. Don't cry, old Fergie." "I'm not crying," Ferguson sobbed. "I'm not crying, except for the awful thing you've gotten into." She looked at me. "I hate you," she said. "She can't make me not hate you, you dirty, sneaking American Italian." Her eyes and nose were red with crying. Catherine smiled at me. "Don't you smile at him with your arm around me. You're unreasonable, Fergie." "I know it," Ferguson sobbed. "You mustn't mind me, either of you. I'm so upset. I'm not reasonable. I know it. I want you both to be happy." "We're happy," Catherine said. "You're a sweet Fergie." Ferguson cried again. "I don't want you happy the way you are. Why don't you get married? You haven't got another wife, have you?" "No," I said. Catherine laughed. "It's nothing to laugh about," Ferguson said. "Plenty of them have other wives." "We'll be married, Fergie," Catherine said, "if it will please you." "Not to please me. You should want to be married." "We've been very busy." "Yes, I know. Busy making babies." I thought she was going to cry again, but she went into bitterness instead. "I suppose you'll go off with him now tonight?" "Yes," said Catherine, "if he wants me." "What about me?" "Are you afraid to stay here alone?" "Yes, I am." "Then I'll stay with you." "No, go on with him. Go with him right away. I'm sick of seeing both of you." "We'd better finish dinner." "No, go right away." "Fergie, be reasonable." "I say get out right away. Go away, both of you." "Let's go then," I said. I was sick of Fergie. "You do want to go. You see, you want to leave me even to eat dinner alone. I've always wanted to go to the Italian lakes, and this is how it is." Oh, she sobbed, then looked at Catherine and choked. "We'll stay till after dinner," Catherine said. "And I'll not leave you alone if you want me to stay. I won't leave you alone, Fergie." No, I want you to go. I want you to go." She wiped her eyes. "I'm so unreasonable. Please don't mind me." The girl who served the meal had been upset by all the crying. Now, as she brought in the next course, she seemed relieved that things were better. That night at the hotel, in our room with the long, empty hall outside and our shoes outside the door, a thick carpet on the floor of the room, outside the windows the rain falling, and in the room light and pleasant and cheerful. Then the light out and it exciting with smooth sheets and the bed comfortable. Feeling that we had come home. Feeling no longer alone. Waking in the night to find the other one there and not gone away. All other things were unreal. We slept when we were tired, and if we woke, the other one woke too, so one was not alone. Often a man wishes to be alone, and a girl wishes to be alone too, and if they love each other, they are jealous of that in each other. But I can truly say we never felt that. We could feel alone when we were together, alone against the others. It has only happened to me like that once. I have been alone while I was with many girls, and that is the way that you can be most lonely. But we were never lonely and never afraid when we were together. I know that the night is not the same as the day, that all things are different, that the things of the night cannot be explained in the day because they do not then exist, and the night can be a dreadful time for lonely people once their loneliness has started. But with Catherine, there was almost no difference in the night, except that it was an even better time. If people bring so much courage to this world, the world has to kill them to break them, so of course it kills them. The world breaks everyone, and afterward many are strong at the broken places. But those that will not break it kills. It kills the very good and the very gentle and the very brave impartially. If you are none of these, you can be sure it will kill you too. But there will be no special hurry. I remember waking in the morning. Catherine was asleep and the sunlight was coming in through the window. The rain had stopped and I stepped out of bed and across the floor to the window. Down below were the gardens, bare now but beautifully regular. The gravel paths, the trees, the stone wall by the lake and the lake in the sunlight with the mountains beyond. I stood at the window looking out, and when I turned away, I saw Catherine was awake and watching me. "How are you, darling?" she said. "Isn't it a lovely day? How do you feel?" "I feel very well. We had a lovely night. Do you want breakfast?" She wanted breakfast. So did I, and we had it in bed, the November sunlight coming in the window and the breakfast tray across my lap. "Don't you want the paper? You always wanted the paper in the hospital?" "No," I said. "I don't want the paper now." "Was it so bad you don't want even to read about it?" "I don't want to read about it. I wish I had been with you so I would know about it too. I'll tell you about it if I ever get it straight in my head." "But won't they arrest you if they catch you out of uniform?" "They'll probably shoot me." "Then we'll not stay here. We'll get out of the country." "I'd thought something of that." "We'll get out. Darling, you shouldn't take silly chances. Tell me, how did you come from Mestre to Milan?" "I came on the train. I was in uniform then." "Weren't you in danger then?" "Not much. I had an old order of movement. I fixed the dates on it in Mestre." "Darling, you're liable to be arrested here any time. I won't have it. It's silly to do something like that. Where would we be if they took you off?" "Let's not think about it. I'm tired of thinking about it." "What would you do if they came to arrest you?" "Shoot them." "You see how silly you are? I won't let you go out of the hotel until we leave here." "Where are we going to go?" "Please don't be that way, darling. We'll go wherever you say, but please find some place to go right away." "Switzerland is down the lake. We can go there." "That will be lovely." It was clouding over outside and the lake was darkening. "I wish we did not always have to live like criminals," I said. "Darling, don't be that way. You haven't lived like a criminal very long. And we never live like criminals. We're going to have a fine time." "I feel like a criminal. I've deserted from the army." "Darling, please be sensible. It's not deserting from the army. It's only the Italian army." I laughed. "You're a fine girl. Let's get back into bed. I feel fine in bed." A little while later, Catherine said, "You don't feel like a criminal, do you?" "No," I said. "Not when I'm with you." "You're such a silly boy," she said. "But I'll look after you. Isn't it splendid, darling, that I don't have any morning sickness? It's grand. You don't appreciate what a fine wife you have, but I don't care. I'll get you some place where they can't arrest you, and then we'll have a lovely time. Let's go there right away." "We will, darling. I'll go any place anytime you wish. Let's not think about anything." "All right." Chapter 35. Catherine went along the lake to the little hotel to see Ferguson, and I sat in the bar and read the papers. There were comfortable leather chairs in the bar, and I sat in one of them and read until the barman came in. The army had not stood at the Tagliamento. They were falling back to the Piave. I remembered the Piave. The railroad crossed it near Sandona, going up to the front. It was deep and slow there and quite narrow. Down below, there were mosquito marshes and canals. There were some lovely villas. Once, before the war, going up to Cortina d'Ampezzo, I had gone along it for several hours in the hills. Up there it looked like a trout stream, flowing swiftly with shallow stretches and pools under the shadow of the rocks. The road turned off from it at Cadore. I wondered how the army that was up there would come down. The barman came in. "Count Greffy was asking for you," he said. "Who?" "Count Greffy. You remember the old man who was here when you were here before?" "Is he here?" "Yes, he's here with his niece. I told him you were here. He wants you to play billiards." "Where is he?" "He's taking a walk." "How is he?" "He's younger than ever. He drank 3 champagne cocktails last night before dinner." "How's his billiard game?" "Good. He beat me. When I told him you were here, he was very pleased. There's nobody here for him to play with." Count Greffy was 94 years old. He had been a contemporary of Metternich and was an old man with white hair and mustache and beautiful manners. He had been in the diplomatic service of both Austria and Italy, and his birthday parties were the great social event of Milan. He was living to be 100 years old and played a smoothly fluent game of billiards that contrasted with his own 94-year-old brittleness. I had met him when I had been at Stresa once before out of season, and while we played billiards, we drank champagne. I thought it was a splendid custom, and he gave me 15 points in 100 and beat me. "Why didn't you tell me he was here?" "I forgot it." "Who else is here?" "No one you know. There are only 6 people altogether." "What are you doing now?" "Nothing." "Come on out fishing. I could come for an hour." "Come on, bring the trolling line." The barman put on a coat and we went out. We went down and got a boat, and I rowed while the barman sat in the stern and let out the line with a spinner and a heavy sinker on the end to troll for lake trout. We rowed along the shore, the barman holding the line in his hand and giving it occasional jerks forward. Stresa looked very deserted from the lake. There were the long rows of bare trees, the big hotels, and the closed villas. I rowed across to Isola Bella and went close to the walls, where the water deepened sharply, and you saw the rock wall slanting down in the clear water, and then up and along to the fisherman's island. The sun was under a cloud, and the water was dark and smooth and very cold. We did not have a strike, though we saw some circles on the water from rising fish. I rowed up opposite the fisherman's island, where there were boats drawn up and men were mending nets. "Should we get a drink?" "All right." I brought the boat up to the stone pier, and the barman pulled in the line, coiling it on the bottom of the boat and hooking the spinner on the edge of the gunwale. I stepped out and tied the boat. We went into a little cafe, sat at a bare wooden table, and ordered vermouth. "Are you tired from rowing?" "I'll row back," he said. "I like to row. Maybe if you hold the line it will change the luck." "All right." "Tell me, how goes the war?" "Rotten." "I don't have to go. I'm too old, like Count Greffy. Maybe you'll have to go yet. Next year they'll call my class, but I won't go." "What will you do?" "Get out of the country. I wouldn't go to war. I was at the war once in Abyssinia. Nix." "Why do you go?" "I don't know. I was a fool." "Have another vermouth?" "All right." The barman rowed back. We trolled up the lake beyond Stresa and then down not far from shore. I held the taut line and felt the faint pulsing of the spinner revolving while I looked at the dark November water of the lake and the deserted shore. The barman rowed with long strokes, and on the forward thrust of the boat the line throbbed. Once I had a strike, the line hardened suddenly and jerked back. I pulled and felt the live weight of the trout, and then the line throbbed again. I had missed him. Did he feel big? Pretty big. Once when I was out trolling alone, I had the line in my teeth and one struck and nearly took my mouth out. The best way is to have it over your leg, I said. Then you feel it and don't lose your teeth. I put my hand in the water. It was very cold. We were almost opposite the hotel now. I have to go in, the barman said. To be there for 11 o'clock. L'heure du cocktail. All right. I pulled in the line and wrapped it on a stick notched at each end. The barman put the boat in a little slip in the stone wall and locked it with a chain and padlock. Anytime you want it, he said, I'll give you the key. Thanks. We went up to the hotel and into the bar. I did not want another drink so early in the morning, so I went up to our room. The maid had just finished doing the room, and Catherine was not back yet. I lay down on the bed and tried to keep from thinking. When Catherine came back, it was all right again. Ferguson was downstairs, she said. She was coming to lunch. I knew you wouldn't mind, Catherine said. No, I said. What's the matter, darling? I don't know. I know. You haven't anything to do. All you have is me, and I go away. That's true. I'm sorry, darling. I know it must be a dreadful feeling to have nothing at all suddenly. My life used to be full of everything, I said. Now, if you aren't with me, I haven't a thing in the world. But I'll be with you. I was only gone for 2 hours. Isn't there anything you can do? I went fishing with the barman. Wasn't it fun? Yes. Don't think about me when I'm not here. That's the way I worked it at the front, but there was something to do then. Othello with his occupation gone, she teased. Othello was a black man, I said. Besides, I'm not jealous. I'm just so in love with you that there isn't anything else. Will you be a good boy and be nice to Ferguson? I'm always nice to Ferguson unless she curses me. Be nice to her. Think how much we have, and she hasn't anything. I don't think she wants what we have. You don't know much, darling, for such a wise boy. I'll be nice to her. I know you will. You're so sweet. She won't stay afterward, will she? No, I'll get rid of her. And then we'll come up here. Of course. What do you think I want to do? We went downstairs to have lunch with Ferguson. She was very impressed by the hotel and the splendor of the dining room. We had a good lunch with a couple of bottles of white Capri. Count Greffy came into the dining room and bowed to us. His niece, who looked a little like my grandmother, was with him. I told Catherine and Ferguson about him, and Ferguson was very impressed. The hotel was very big and grand and empty, but the food was good. The wine was very pleasant, and finally, the wine made us all feel very well. Catherine had no need to feel any better. She was very happy. Ferguson became quite cheerful. I felt very well myself. After lunch, Ferguson went back to her hotel. She was going to lie down for a while after lunch, she said. Along late in the afternoon, someone knocked on our door. Who is it? The Count Greffy wishes to know if you will play billiards with him. I looked at my watch. I had taken it off, and it was under the pillow. Do you have to go, darling? Catherine whispered. I think I'd better. The watch was 4:15 o'clock. Out loud I said, Tell the Count Greffy I will be in the billiard room at 5 o'clock. At 4:45 I kissed Catherine goodbye and went into the bathroom to dress. Knotting my tie and looking in the glass, I looked strange to myself in the civilian clothes. I must remember to buy some more shirts and socks. Will you be away a long time? Catherine asked. She looked lovely in the bed. Would you hand me the brush? I watched her brushing her hair, holding her head so the weight of her hair all came on one side. It was dark outside, and the light over the head of the bed shone on her hair and on her neck and shoulders. I went over and kissed her and held her hand with the brush, and her head sunk back on the pillow. I kissed her neck and shoulders. I felt faint with loving her so much. I don't want to go away. I don't want you to go away. I won't go then. Yes, go. It's only for a little while, and then you'll come back. We'll have dinner up here. Hurry and come back." I found the Count Greffy in the billiard room. He was practicing strokes, looking very fragile under the light that came down above the billiard table. On a card table a little way beyond the light was a silver icing bucket with the necks and corks of 2 champagne bottles showing above the ice. The Count Greffy straightened up when I came toward the table and walked toward me. He put out his hand. "It is such a great pleasure that you are here. You were very kind to come to play with me." "It was very nice of you to ask me. Are you quite well? They told me you were wounded on the Isonzo. I hope you are well again." "I'm very well. Have you been well?" "Oh, I am always well. But I am getting old. I detect signs of age now." "I can't believe it." "Yes. Do you want to know one? It is easier for me to talk Italian. I discipline myself, but I find when I am tired that it is so much easier to talk Italian. So I know I must be getting old." "We could talk Italian. I am a little tired too." "Oh, but when you are tired it will be easier for you to talk English." "American." "Yes, American. You will please talk American. It is a delightful language." "I hardly ever see Americans." "You must miss them. One misses one's countrymen and especially one's countrywomen. I know that experience. Should we play, or are you too tired?" "I'm not really tired. I said that for a joke. What handicap will you give me?" "Have you been playing very much?" "None at all." "You play very well? 10 points in 100? "You flatter me." 15? "That would be fine, but you will beat me." "Should we play for a stake?" "You always wished to play for a stake." "I think we'd better." "All right, I will give you 18 points and we will play for a franc a point." He played a lovely game of billiards, and with the handicap I was only 4 ahead at 50. Count Greffy pushed a button on the wall to ring for the barman. "Open 1 bottle, please," he said. Then to me, "We will take a little stimulant." The wine was icy cold and very dry and good. "Should we talk Italian? Would you mind very much? It is my weakness now." We went on playing, sipping the wine between shots, speaking in Italian but talking little, concentrated on the game. Count Greffy made his 100th point, and with the handicap, I was only at 94. He smiled and patted me on the shoulder. "Now we will drink the other bottle, and you will tell me about the war." He waited for me to sit down. "About anything else," I said. "You don't want to talk about it?" "Good. What have you been reading?" "Nothing," I said. "I'm afraid I am very dull." "No, but you should read." "What is there written in wartime?" "There is Le Faux by a Frenchman, Barbusse. There is Mr. Britling Sees Through It." "No, he doesn't." "What?" "He doesn't see through it. Those books were at the hospital." "Then you have been reading?" "Yes, but nothing any good." "I thought Mr. Britling a very good study of the English middle-class soul." "I don't know about the soul." "Poor boy. We none of us know about the soul. Are you croyant?" "At night." Count Greffy smiled and turned the glass with his fingers. "I had expected to become more devout as I grow older, but somehow I haven't," he said. "It is a great pity." "Would you like to live after death?" I asked, and instantly felt a fool to mention death. But he did not mind the word. "It would depend on the life. This life is very pleasant. I would like to live forever." He smiled. "I very nearly have." We were sitting in the deep leather chairs, the champagne in the ice bucket and our glasses on the table between us. "If you ever live to be as old as I am, you will find many things strange." "You never seem old." "It is the body that is old. Sometimes I am afraid I will break off a finger as one breaks a stick of chalk. and the spirit is no older and not much wiser. You are wise. No, that is the great fallacy, the wisdom of old men. They do not grow wise, they grow careful. Perhaps that is wisdom. It is a very unattractive wisdom. What do you value most? Someone I love? With me, it is the same. That is not wisdom. Do you value life? Yes. So do I, because it is all I have. And to give birthday parties, he laughed. You are probably wiser than I am. You do not give birthday parties. We both drank the wine. What do you think of the war, really? I asked. I think it is stupid. Who will win it? Italy. Why? They are a younger nation. Do younger nations always win wars? They are apt to for a time. Then what happens? They become older nations. You said you were not wise. Dear boy, that is not wisdom. That is cynicism. It sounds very wise to me. It's not particularly. I could quote you the examples on the other side, but it is not bad. Have we finished the champagne? Almost. Should we drink some more? Then I must dress. Perhaps we'd better not now. You are sure you don't want more? Yes. He stood up. I hope you will be very fortunate and very happy and very, very healthy. Thank you. And I hope you will live forever. Thank you. I have. And if you ever become devout, pray for me if I am dead. I am asking several of my friends to do that. I had expected to become devout myself, but it has not come. I thought he smiled sadly, but I could not tell. He was so old, and his face was very wrinkled, so that a smile used so many lines that all gradations were lost. I might become very devout, I said. Anyway, I will pray for you. I had always expected to become devout. All my family died very devout, but somehow it does not come. It's too early. Maybe it is too late. Perhaps I have outlived my religious feeling. My own comes only at night. Then too you are in love. Do not forget, that is a religious feeling. You believe so? Of course. He took a step toward the table. You were very kind to play. It was a great pleasure. We will walk upstairs together. Chapter 36. That night there was a storm, and I woke to hear the rain lashing the window panes. It was coming in the open window. Someone had knocked on the door. I went to the door very softly, not to disturb Catherine, and opened it. The barman stood there. He wore his overcoat and carried his wet hat. Can I speak to you, Tenente? What's the matter? It's a very serious matter. I looked around. The room was dark. I saw the water on the floor from the window. Come in, I said. I took him by the arm into the bathroom, locked the door, and put on the light. I sat down on the edge of the bathtub. What's the matter, Emilio? Are you in trouble? No. You are, Tenente. Yes? They are going to arrest you in the morning. Yes? I came to tell you. I was out in the town and I heard them talking in a cafe. I see. He stood there, his coat wet, holding his wet hat, and said nothing. Why are they going to arrest me? For something about the war. Do you know what? No, but I know that they know you were here before as an officer, and now you are here out of uniform. After this retreat, they arrest everybody. I thought a minute. What time do they come to arrest me? In the morning. I don't know the time. What do you say to do? He put his hat in the wash bowl. It was very wet and had been dripping on the floor. If you have nothing to fear, an arrest is nothing. But it is always bad to be arrested, especially now. I don't want to be arrested. Then go to Switzerland. How? In my boat. There is a storm, I said. The storm is over. It is rough, but you will be all right. When should we go? Right away. They might come to arrest you early in the morning. What about our bags? Get them packed. Get your lady dressed. I will take care of them. Where will you be? I will wait here. I don't want anyone to see me outside in the hall. I opened the door, closed it, and went into the bedroom. Catherine was awake. What is it, darling? It's all right, Cat, I said. Would you like to get dressed right away and go in a boat to Switzerland? Would you? No, I said. I'd like to go back to bed. What is it about? The barman says they're going to arrest me in the morning. Is the barman crazy? No. Then please hurry, darling, and get dressed so we can start. She sat up on the side of the bed. She was still sleepy. Is that the barman in the bathroom? Yes. Then I won't wash. Please look the other way, darling, and I'll be dressed in just a minute. I saw her white back as she took off her nightgown, and then I looked away because she wanted me to. She was beginning to be a little big with the child, and she did not want me to see her. I dressed hearing the rain on the windows. I did not have much to put in my bag. There's plenty of room in my bag, Cat, if you need any. I'm almost packed, she said. Darling, I'm awfully stupid, but why is the barman in the bathroom? Shh. He's waiting to take our bags down. He's awfully nice. He's an old friend, I said. I nearly sent him some pipe tobacco once. I looked out the open window at the dark night. I could not see the lake, only the dark and the rain, but the wind was quieter. I'm ready, darling, Catherine said. All right. I went to the bathroom door. Here are the bags, Emilio, I said. The barman took the 2 bags. You're very good to help us, Catherine said. That's nothing, lady, the barman said. I'm glad to help you just so I don't get in trouble myself. Listen, he said to me. I'll take these out the servants' stairs and to the boat. You just go out as though you were going for a walk. It's a lovely night for a